Hi everyone, welcome to another video. In this video we're going to build our own pedal assembly. We're going to use some parts, any inspiration from the original parts, and then we're going to modify this to make sure that it will work in our application, and I'll show you how we're going to do this. So these are the original pedal assemblies that I own. The black ones are the ones that I took off of my car, and these I managed to buy on eBay last year because I knew I needed them. And if you find Series 1 Europa parts, it's a miracle because there aren't any left. So what we have here are the pedal assemblies with the brake and the clutch pedal. Both pivot on an axis, which are held in place by a pivot point on the chassis and a little bracket. And then we have two throttle assemblies. So this is one bracket that bolts to the chassis and a pedal that pivots in there. This is one that's assembled. Now, as you can see, they're in pretty bad condition, and this is actually free. That's quite a miracle. But you can see that the pedals have been modified, they have been lengthened, and this one is lengthened straight up and this one has been moved to the side. And this is because you can see that originally the pedals are really close together. So if you have really big feet, it is an issue. I'm not a very tall person, if you can say that, so I don't need to do the modification. This one is completely seized, so I've tried to free it, but I cannot get it to move. But what we do know is that there's one axis and the brake pedal pivots on the lower shaft. So you can see that the clutch pedal is connected with the shaft to this lever, which is connected to the clutch cable, which goes to the back of the chassis. So what we're going to do is we're going to build our own shaft for the pedals with some oilite bushings, and I am going to use the actual pedals from this pedal box because it's seized, so I can't do anything with it. So I'm just going to cut them off and reuse the pedals. So I have original pedals with the original shapes and the original spacing, which is quite important to me. And then we're going to restore one of the two throttle assemblies. I might even mix and match. Both of the brackets are cracked along the top edge. This one as well. This one is bent, but that's nothing that we can't fix. I think I will use the actual pedal from this one because it's in a little bit better condition. It has been sandblasted, and I might try to save this bracket because it has a welded stud on here instead of the little bolt that's obviously already bent. This is just a bolt that's a throttle stop, and this already has the nut on the back to facilitate this. Also, these holes are drilled out a bit. This means that it's a little bit easier to assemble because of the spacing on the three holes. So we'll see what we're going to do, but we're going to cherry pick the best pieces of all of the assemblies that I have, and then we're going to build our own from scratch. We're going to cut up this pedal assembly just to get to the pedals and to the little lever arm for the clutch. Now, before we're going to take it apart, we need to take a few measurements. Now, if you look carefully, and not sure if it's visible on video, is that the clutch pedal and the lever arm for the clutch are on the same axis, but they're offset a little bit. Now, you can get this little inclinometer, and you can see it's 9.5 degrees, that it's different from this one to that one, because I zeroed the measuring tool on this part, and now we're going to have it on this, and you can see that's 9.5 degrees more towards the front. So we have to remember this so we can weld it up with the same offset. So what we're going to try to do is to mount this in the vise, and then we're just going to cut along the axis of the pedals, just straight through the tube, and then we'll clean it up afterwards. It's way too difficult to cut along the little brazing here. This will mean that I would probably just damage the pedals, so I'm just going to cut straight on, and then we can grind a little piece of tube off. So you can see where I sectioned the complete pedal box. So I've cut out the pedals. So these pieces we can throw away, and these we need to clean up a little bit. So we're just going to remove the excess of the tube that's in between. So we're going to cut here, then grind off this, and hopefully we can get them free. On this piece we need a little bit more cleanup, because we still have a little bit of the tube to cut off, which wasn't that easy, because I thought I would like to keep the little end stop, but it's bent anyway. On the other pedal box that I have, it's straight, so we're going to cut this off as well, just the same as we did on those ones, and we'll make a new end stop. So we'll do that, and once we have all the pieces nice and clean, we can start to modify the brake pedal, and then we can weld everything back up again. What I've done now is I've cleaned up the bottom parts, and I've coped the pedals to make sure that they fit on the tubing. The next thing to do is to modify the brake pedal for being able to use adjustable master cylinders. So we have this kit, which has a bushing that needs to be welded into the brake pedal, and then the two clevises which will operate the master cylinders and will be adjustable between the front and back. The hole here is where the original clevis for the master cylinder would mount to. Now we have to weld in this bushing on the same location. The problem with that is that the diameter of the bush is bigger than the diameter of the pedal. So if we're going to cut a hole in there, the complete alignment of the pedal is gone. So we're going to try to alleviate that by welding in these plates. They're just there to make sure that everything stays the way it should be. So we'll weld this in, then we can drill the hole and weld it back up. Then we can remove the plates. This should protect the brake pedal from deforming and saving me a little bit of work by having to align it afterwards. I've welded the two braces to the brake pedal this way that if we cut a big hole, the bottom piece and the top piece are still aligned. So we're going to drill a hole that's the size of the bushing on the location of the original hole, like so, with a hole saw. So we're just going to use that hole as a pilot hole, and we'll cut the hole. If it's then big enough, then we'll weld the bushing in. After a trip to the hardware store, I finally managed to drill the hole for the bush, and it fits perfectly. So now we're going to align the bush to the center of the brake pedal, and then we can weld it into place. Afterwards we can remove the bracing. I've laid out all the parts for the brake and clutch assembly. So we have an inner shaft which is supported by these two oilite bushes. On this shaft there will be the tab for the clutch arm, and we'll make a new end stop with a piece of nail. We have the bracket that will bolt this shaft to the chassis. On this side it will be supported by this tab that I made of angle iron, and of course another oilite bush on a hinge pin. Then we have the middle shaft, which is for the actual brake. This is also supported by two oilite bushes. Then we have the clutch pedal, which is supported on the lower shaft, but I want to make it removable, so I have a sleeve that will go on there. It's supported by an oilite bush, but this is more to act as a spacer, and this will be held in place by this pin. So what I need to do now is I need to weld up all the tabs for the side and to weld all of the pedals to all the shafts. I'm going to use the original spacing of the pedals. I still have the other pedal sets to measure it from. Once everything's been welded up, I can show you how it will assemble. The main assembly is complete now. Most of the things are welded. Some few things need to be done. So I need to drill the hole for the pin to hold the clutch pedal to this axis. Then what I also need to do is I need to weld in the end stop on the little clutch lever, and I need to grind off the excess of the little shaft for the outer bearing. There are a couple of things that we need to do to finalize this clutch pedal assembly. The first thing is to weld in the end stop, which I made out of a piece of nail, to the end of the lever arm to make an end stop. Second thing is to attach the clutch pedal to the shaft to operate the clutch cable. There are two things that we need to be mindful of. First thing is that we have to clock the little arm 9.5 degrees as opposed to the pedal, because that's what we measured before. The second thing is that we need to attach the pedal to make it solid enough that it will operate flawlessly, but I would also like to take it apart so I can service the pedal assembly if I have to. So welding is out of the question. I can't use a bolt through it because the head of the bolt will interfere with the rest of the mechanism. So what I've come up with is to center drill both the pedal and the shaft and use this as a roll pin, spring pin, whatever you want to call it. It's 5mm. So I'm going to drill all the way through this. I'm going to drill to the pedal first, then I'm going to position it to the 9.5 degrees, and then we'll center drill the shaft as well, and hopefully everything will line up so I can use the roll pin to attach the pedal to the shaft. As you'll hopefully be able to see, the angle gauge is now at 9.5 degrees. I've made sure that there's enough room for the brake pedal to move, but not enough to have any slack in it. And I've marked the hole on the shaft with a marker through the center hole that I already made. Now I can take it apart, drill the center hole in the shaft, and hopefully it will fit with the correct offset. So it's a bit difficult to get the gauge to stand on its own, but the readings that I'm getting are between 9.3 and 9.7, so I think it's okay. if we will be able to attach it like this. So all the holes are drilled, and now the drill bit's holding it in place. So it's 9.4, 9.5, 9.6. So I'm fairly happy with that. The only thing to do now is to weld the end stop to the pedal. I'm going to use the old pedal assembly as a guide to weld it, to make sure it's in the correct position, and then the complete pedal assembly is finished. I chose to restore my original throttle pedal instead of the one that I bought earlier, and this one may seem to be in a bit better condition, but it has split on the same side. The welded stud broke off and has been replaced by a piece of threaded rod, and the end stop screw is seized. The pedal itself is in a bit better condition, but the steel bush that's in this little shaft is stuck and I can't get it out. So I've restored this one. This just needs a little bit of cleanup. I haven't done that yet, but mechanically this is okay. On this piece I had to weld up the crack on top, and I cleaned this up. I drilled these holes out a little bit bigger, which will help me with installation, and I rethreaded the nut on the end for the throttle end stop, so that this will thread in nicely. I also need to get a new bolt, but I have already sourced some oilite bushes to go in here, so I just need to remove the paint and remove the rust and assemble it. Otherwise there's not much work on this. So I'll quickly do a comparison shot between the original pedals, which were completely rusty. They still moved, but you can't service this because this is braced to the shaft and you can't get the brake pedal out, which was mangled anyway. To our new design, which has a brake bias adjustment, which has oilite bushes, so self-oiling bronze bushes. And if we take the pin out of the clutch pedal, we can completely disassemble the shaft and service this, oil this, polish this, paint this as much as we want. So this should last a long time, and it's much easier to manage than the original one. So I'm quite happy with this, and now we can move on to the next project. This is the pedal assembly all mounted up. And there are a couple of things that I still need to finish off, so I need to paint it all. I'm going to find a way to insert the screw to the little bobbin that keeps it in place on the inside. It's only an issue if the pedals are between the little box. If they're further forward, I can just screw this in and then slide the pedals over, which at my height I probably need to put it in here anyway. Otherwise I just need to shorten the screw. The second thing is that I need to fabricate some longer push rods that go from the brake clevis towards the master cylinder. I just have some threaded rod and some threaded inserts which I can use to lengthen it. I just need to cut them to size because they are different as well if you move the pedal position. So I'm just going to wait with that until I can get the chassis back into the body and I can figure out my seating position. Then I can make the push rods to length. Otherwise it's all good. So the actual throttle pedal will mount to the side of the chassis like so. I just need to paint it and assemble it, but this will be like this. So you can see that the pedals are quite close to each other, which isn't that big of a deal because it's nice for heel and toe and I don't have big feet. So just disassemble it, paint it, and then we can mount it in the chassis. Just need to drill some holes once I know how far forward the pedals need to be. But I think this is a good setup, and I'll be able to service it if I need to and replace the bushes because they're all standard sizes. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, just post them below or send me an email through my website. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of the upcoming videos. And I hope I see you next time. Goodbye.